This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and much gratitude that we welcome Kate G, who's come to share on the topic of I Can't Do God's Will My Way for about 40 minutes, after which we'll open up for the QA portion of the meeting. Kate, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you all. Thank you, Young, for the invitation. My name is Kate. I'm a recovered addict and I'm also a recovered alcoholic. It is my honour and privilege to be here, truly. Wow. I'm going to say a prayer, guys, just to get me out of the way and help me to get centred. I know we use our set-aside prayer a lot, and I sat with this and built on it. And it's a prayer that I'd like to share with you as well. So before this journey begins, may all that is not true fall away. All that I believe about myself, all that I believe about others, all assumptions about what brings healing and sobriety, so that space is made for a new understanding, for the quiet voice of truth, for the rhythm of something greater, the universe, the flow of life, pure love, or simply trust. May I be humble, may I be willing, may I be teachable, may I be shown a new way. Amen. All right, thank you, gang. Thank you, God, for placing me exactly where I need to be at 5 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. I always feel that I am far better at making coffee, drying up, or putting out chairs. But here we are in front of you guys. So thank you for the opportunity. When Young asked me for the kind of like the title of this talk, I said, okay, when do you need it by? And he said, give me a few days, and send it to me. So I did. And I was sitting, and it really just became apparent that I cannot do God's will my way. I am really square peg, round hole, bigger hammer type of person, until my back is against the wall. And I've realized now, until the wall is on fire, I will try and push and push and push. And you know what? The pain is in the resistance. And I don't know why it takes me so long to learn that every time. But yeah, that's the way that it is. I've been brought from I can't do God's will my way to thy will and mine be one. And it's only through the process of the elegant steps that a friend of mine calls them, a set of elegant spiritual exercises. And I really think that is how I feel about the steps. It's transformed me from what I was to what I am today, which is still so far off, but I have come so far. When I got to you, my life was in absolute tatters. I'm the firstborn of 2 girls. My sister is not an addict, nor is she an alcoholic. And apparently neither are my parents. I'm the first one. So the funny thing about that is, though, my dad, I swear, has one part of this illness. My dad can pick up a drink and he can't stop. So when he picks it up, the compulsion and the craving for more sets in, and he can't put it down until he's basically poisoned himself. But he can control the starting. And my mum can nurse a glass of wine for a week, and it is painful to watch. Like, I can't even watch her drink. It's just awful. So for me, the difference being that I was really, really interested in changing the way that I felt from really early on with whatever you've got. And the very first time I drank, I was 7. And I knew that something about that changed the way that I felt. And it was like my skin fit. Nothing was a problem anymore. And bear in mind, I was 7. Like, I could have done with a drink going to primary school. But I don't know. There was something in that, but also with that came the fact that I knew I needed to keep that a secret. I couldn't be openly asking Grandma if I could have a sip of her whiskey next to her. This all had to be kept very, very under wraps, because the way that it felt was something special, but I knew I probably shouldn't be doing it. I don't know why that happened at 7, but that really, really did. I could never, ever, ever stay sober on my own. And when I got here, I'd managed to lose my kids, my family, a marriage, and my self-respect. And it just all flew out the window. I blew right past taking an exhilarating part of life straight into pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. And that's where it spat me out at the end. When I very first got, I'm probably going to jump around a bit, guys, so I hope that you can follow this okay. when I first got here, I remember going to this one particular meeting and I was alone. And the 2 days before that meeting, I'd been dropped off at a meeting and everything that I owned was in a plastic Woolies bag, which is like being in a Sainsbury's bag now. Every single thing I owned was in a plastic Sainsbury's bag, dropped off outside a meeting and told that I wasn't to go back to anywhere that I'd been before. That was it. Good luck. You're on your own from here. And I didn't know what to do. I just knew that there was a guy that said to me, come to the meeting on the Tuesday night. We'll all be there. And I thought, all right, okay, I'll go to the meeting on the Tuesday night. Anyway, I rocked up and I started to go to this meeting because it was safe, because it was warm, because this man kept promising that everything was going to be okay. And I could get dinner there, right? They had loads of biscuits, loads of sweets, some warm stuff. And I was basically going to get fed and stay alive. The whole thing with alcoholism and addiction for me is it dictated every single thing that I did. I'm a mother of 2 kids. I would take these children out. We lived in Singapore for a time and there were 24-hour bars and places that you could go because of, businessmen would go out and it would be all hours of the day and night. I would take my children out at God knows what time, selling them the idea that they could get an ice cream because I knew that I could get a drink. They would come home and I would be in a pool of my own blood because I'd slipped on the marble floor and opened my face. I've got a scar on my chin where I passed out in the street in Singapore. How I wasn't arrested for this, I don't know. At the time, I was being sponsored by a woman who was in an Uber and asked the Uber to stop because she thought she recognised the woman on the floor in the road, and it was me. And but for the grace of God, she got me into that cab and she got me home. And my children were in the home and they didn't know what was wrong. And this beautiful woman gave them her number and said, if there was ever an issue, just call her. That's what you guys do in my life. I can't do this on my own. That was my very first eye-opening into, I can't do this alone and I can't make this stop. I had to accept spiritual help. That was how it was put to me, and it's the only thing that has ever helped. When I was younger, I really, God on the wall in the steps did not bother me. When I was really young, my mum would take us to church, and I always knew that in the service, something happened to me going into the church and leaving. Something had taken place that was beyond me. It felt safe. It felt deep. It felt like something greater than me. And I always really, truly believed in that space. It wasn't of me. And the funny thing is, my dad's mum died when I was about 5. And when I was 8 or 9, I remember going through my parents' wardrobe. I was actually trying to find a certificate of adoption because I wasn't in this family. Like, I just didn't think that I fit. But I went back to the back of my mum's wardrobe and found this album. And in the back of the album were all the pictures of my dad's mum. And I remember getting to the last page and and there was a picture of her handbag and her glasses on this bench in the cemetery that we buried her in. And I remember getting on my knees and praying, and I prayed to my grandma and I prayed to whatever God I believed in at that time, please come back and visit me. I need you with me. And I got up from my knees, and she was a really heavy smoker, and the smell of smoke in the room was like somebody was standing outside the window smoking. And I ran out of the room and I went to grab my mum, who was in the kitchen, and brought her back and went, can you smell it? And she said, I can't smell anything, but it had gone. But I know with all of me that was there at that time, right? That's all that I know. I can't explain it. But I was just really, when they got to tell me that, you can't do this and God's going to have to get involved and actually help you, this is a spiritual program of action, I was actually really, really relieved, right? God didn't bother me at all. I was sick of me. I was just really pleased that it wasn't going to be up to me. It was an absolute relief. Because talk about failure. The book talks about complete failure of of my human resources. I got to the end of me. Total collapse and despair. Page 50 was really interesting because when we got here, I was like, it talks about every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself. And that was two really, really different things for me. I always believed in, it was getting access to that I was unable to do on my own. The deep place within, it was like I couldn't touch it. I knew it was there. I could get in touch with it when I was really little. But when I got to you, I felt so broken and so damaged and so dirty that I couldn't connect to that place. And when I got near it, I'd avoid it because it was too precious for me to try and touch. I don't know whether that makes sense, but I really didn't believe, ultimately, is what I'm trying to say, that there was a power that could pull it off, that could change my life around. And still today, I can believe like that. Still today, I can think that, oh, God's forgotten about me. Thank God for working with others, because I can always see God working in your life. It's the hand of God in my life that I fall asleep to so often. As I say, I'm going to bounce around because things are coming to me. But when I got here and I was 10 minutes sober, I was slapped with divorce papers and house repossession papers. And if I wasn't in criminal court, I was in family court. And it was just an absolute mess. And the woman, the children's father got to sell the house, was not the right fit. You know, every time another zero seemed to go and add on the end, her skirt got shorter and her heels got higher. And I just thought, we can't be doing this. Like, I'm probably not the right person for you to be dealing with in a very spiritual way, right? Nope. So I said, I didn't know what to do, but the house was going from under me. The kids were going left. I was over here. Oh, it was a terrible, terrible mess. Anyway, this guy at the meeting, he just kept telling me to turn up. And I had made a friend that at that time was in detox. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to think about any of it. And I got a load of clothes in a bag and I was on my way to take them to her to the hospital in detox. And I took them to her. And on the way home, I stopped to get some food for grocery shopping. And I bumped into an old friend who was a real estate agent who said, let me come and have a look at the house. And she sold it for us. That's the hand of God in my life. I just turned up to do the work that was in front of me and something else happened on my behalf. It always seems to happen like that. The steps gave me access to, I always had the belief in. And those two things, when we got to that part in page 50, I was like, I feel that with all of me. They're so, so different. And that was the whole thing. There's this really beautiful story about a little girl who is throwing stones at a window. And let's imagine that behind the window is God's room. And the curtains are draped like that. And she's throwing stones and somebody comes over and says, what are you doing? And she says, I'm throwing stones at the window, but look, you can see the curtain twitch. And that's how it seems to have always been for me. I've known that it's been there. I felt it. And that deep seeking, that deep need to get closer to the power, to get closer to the source is the thing. That's the enthusiasm in me today, right? The filled with God bit. I love that because it's so like that. You know, it is tangible, but it's over there. It's esoteric, but it's deep within. It's all of this stuff. I just know that I cannot try and do God's will my way. It's only when I let go, when I actually surrender to whatever is going to be, then the magic can take place. God's been calling me all the way through my addiction, through my anxiety, through the using, through the lying, through the cheating, through the stealing, through the suicide attempts, through all of it. God has been with me, just waiting for me to turn. I really think that I underestimated the contract that I make in step 3. You know, this divine contract that I have, because what can I possibly give to God that God does not already have? And it's my free will, right? When I am born, it is my birthright that I'm given this free will. God doesn't say to me, right, this is how it's going to be. You're going to believe in me. God just lets me be however it's going to be. Can you imagine being in a relationship with someone that says, well, I'm just here because I've been told that I need to love you. And so like, this is what we're doing now. And let's just call this a relationship. I don't think that would go very well. Like, that is not what I want for my life with God today. You know, I want to give him all of me because I have everything. The children are back in my life 100%. Those little people were taken out of me. Yes, for their own good. And yes, because it was needed. And yes, today I see that. But that is incredible to me. That blows my mind. You know, getting this kind of personal relationship. You know, on page 29, when it talks about how the men and women got, these are why the stories are written in the back, how each one established their own personal relationship with God. You know, as I said, when I came here, I was so frightened, you know, that I was going to lose the most precious things in my life. I didn't want a career. I was never driven in the way of work. I only ever wanted to be a mother, and I failed. And I failed God, and I failed these kids, and I failed myself, and my reputation was shattered. This man features a lot. Man, I've got to go back to that meeting and find him. But he said to me, listen, sweetheart, you can't save your face and your ass at the same time. So why don't you come all the way in and sit all the way down and just do what we do? And, you know, it sounded like a really good idea when my ass was on fire. So I used to sit and write out these prayers to God. I wasn't able to sit quietly, ever. So I was one of those that if I was meditating, I had to have something going on the phone and a little bit of white noise in the background, just because just everything's safe, right? Just make sure that there's something happening in the room at all times. And I would sit and I would write. And then I would find music that would blow my heart open. And I would sit and I would cry. And when I came here, I was so tightly locked down that I used to speak to a pastor, and he had to teach me how to cry again. And it was this whole exercise of like laying on the bed and just being open and just letting it all take you. I was in such a state that I wasn't in touch with any part of me. And yeah, as I say, so I used to write the prayers out, sit and be, and something came to me that it was just, God always wants what I want for me or something better, but never worse. And that started slowly by slowly, when that really started to permeate all of me. It was that I thought, I can start to lean in and trust this. There was a very early meditation, and it was something that kept recurring for me. And I remember being at a hotel. My parents had come over. It was one in the city, and we were really, really high up on one of the really high floors, and it had a window seat. And I thought, oh, I had all my you know, daily devotionals around me and candles. And it was just, you know, this time it was fabulous. Anyway, this meditation was going from the bridge of reason to the shore of faith. And I used to sit there, and the meditation was, if I got deep enough and quiet enough, this giant hand in the clouds, but this giant hand would come out, and it would just, and I would think, you know, that whole, what if I fall, but what if you fly? Just keep walking forwards. Just keep walking forwards. And I did. And I walked from where I was right into the middle. And when I was in the center of the palm of God, I'd come out of it, like I'd kind of wake up. But that was recurring. And I know that was sent for me. You know, we all have these sort of special where we think that was just for me. It was because it was recurring, and I could really connect with that. It was things like that. There was another story that I used to hang on to, a bit like the girl with the throwing stones at the window. And there's this girl in her bed, and her mum goes in to tuck her in at night, and there's a thunderstorm happening outside, and the curtains aren't closed, so she can see the branches and the wind and all of that kind of thing outside. And her mum says, every time there's lightning, the little girl looks out the window and grins. And her mum says, what are you doing? And she said, look, God's taking my picture. And I thought, I just love that. Don't you? Every time the lightning was there, that God was taking the picture. But the facts are, and the two facts on page 25, right? The great reality, the central fact and the great fact is that God has entered my life and lives in a way that is completely and utterly remarkable. It really, really is. I get to see that mostly when I'm with you. I really believe that God comes to me disguised as my everyday life. And if God is in your face, then I have to remember that always. You know, I didn't want my old life shinied up and cleaned up. I wanted a completely new life, and that was promised to me. It told me that I would be reborn. You know, I couldn't live with the same mind that I got drunk and I got high with. You know, another example that I can't do God's will my way. I would never, ever, ever have thought this would be the trajectory or the path that would have been set out. You know, and it was really, really clear. I think that in how it works, the three pertinent ideas sum it up perfectly, that bridge before we get to three, you know, that I'm an alcoholic and an addict and I cannot manage my own life. Like, that was check, you know, that probably no human power could have relieved my alcoholism. Absolutely. And that God could and would if he was sought. God can and will if I continue to seek, always, you know, and that's the thing. It talks about any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. I couldn't throw my addict card at that. That wasn't a get out of jail free card. That was any life, not just Kate because you've messed up. You know what I mean? Because from so little, anything that I was told, if you want it, you've got to go and get it. If you want protection, you've got to provide it. If you want safety, you better get wise and get a bit streetwise and keep yourself safe then. Everything that I needed, anything that needed to be provided, I needed to go out there and I needed to get it happen, make it happen. And that was the message that I got growing up, you know. My parents and grandparents are super beautiful humans that gave me everything that they possibly could have given me at any point. But I needed to learn that it was a different way. It's nothing to do with me going out and making it happen. It's me turning up and being willing to continue to do the work. It's me passing this on for fun and for free, because then that's how I get refilled up. When I was, I don't know, very, very late teens, I went into a really, really deep depression, and I couldn't get out of the bed for about, God, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks. And I had this kind of moment again where the moments that I had when I was little in church, I kind of got to that place again. I don't know whether it was desperation is what drives me to that place. Sometimes I've come to see that because I recognize that space within me and I know what it is. And so I got out of the bed after 2 or 3 weeks of deep depression, kind of just came to life again, thought, okay, this is me making it happen, by the way. Right, that's it. I'm going to get myself to a job agency. I'm going to get an interview. We're going to get our life back on track. I went to the job agency and they said, because I'd danced and I'd been at theatre school prior to that, they said, yeah, we really can't send you with a CV. We're just not going to do that. Let's send you for experience and see how that goes. Anyway, I walked in and the guy that interviewed me was the guy that I dated, which is the guy that I then married, which is the guy that's the children's father. And I think it's Mickey Bush that puts it perfectly. Relationship being the acronym RELATIONSHIP, right? Really exciting love affair turns into outrageous nightmare. Sanity hangs in peril, right? 100%. This is me going out there making it happen. You'll do. Let's do that. Go and get one of those. Let's live there. It's on, right? That was a disaster, folks. I'm still live to tell the story, but I tell you what, it nearly took both our lives, that relationship. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, it talks about this, you know, any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. Never being interested in the career, only wanting the children and failing. When I told you about going to the meeting, and in those 2 days from being dropped off at the meeting to meeting this guy at the Tuesday night meeting, I would go into the supermarket and I would go to the aisle that I would buy stuff to put into the kids' lunchboxes and just sob, because I had absolutely destroyed everything. It was later on that it occurred to me, right, that everything that we have is on loan. My children aren't my children, they're God's children that he's gifted me, right? The car that I drive, the job that I have, the place that I live, the women that I work with, those that help me, it is all on loan. And there was one part I remember, it was like a aha moment when it's in We Agnostics, and it talks about the visual proof being the weakest proof, right? Because everything that I thought was real was visual stuff that I could touch, and it was success, it was money, it was where I lived, it was the car I drive, it was clothes that I wore, it was the handbag that I had, it was the makeup I was putting on my face, and it goes on ad infinitum. And it was none of the stuff, you know. Did I have a purpose? No. Was I happy? No. Was I miserable? 100%. I was a walking billboard of page 52, you know, the bedevilments, like that embodied. That's how I was turning up, because I was trying to create my life with no power. And I say this quite often, but powerless doesn't mean less power. It means no power, right? And thank God that pages 62 and 63 offer me a solution, you know. I play God when I think I know what's best for me. I play God when I know what's best for you. And I have a lot of time to tell you what I think that you should be doing. I can give you all really, really good advice. Don't take it, but you know what I mean? Like that, I play God a lot. And that's the thing. And I was so offended when I was told that my life was none of my business. But my life is none of my business. So your life sure as shit ain't none of my business. And that made everything a lot easier, actually, right? Just let it be, you know, go with the flow. I think that's the whole thing in my nightly reviews now, is in the stream of life. Like, was I railing against everything today, or was I actually able to go with it? And what part of that did I bring God into? You know, the easiest inventory I've ever made is, am I holding God's hand, right? Where did I drop God's hand? That's all it's asking me to do, right? Where could I have done something better because I was connected to power, but I went off on my own? I think it's page 63. The best promise in the book has probably got to be, God will provide what I need if I keep close to him and perform what his work well, right? Provide everything that I need. Everything. I went from life in a Sainsbury's bag with no one around me. Like I'd been arrested, I was in a holding cell, and the police brought me the paperwork to fill in, and there was not one single name I could put on that paperwork for next of kin. That's what I'd done to my life, right? I don't recognise that life anymore. But for the grace of God, I don't recognise that girl. I don't recognise that life, because something new has been gifted to me. You know, it talks about the director being one of the relationships that we have in the third step. Father, director, what's the other one? Anyway, director. And I was like, okay, well, let's look at director, because I can look at father, principal, director, but the director is the one who decides how it's meant to look, the parts people are going to be playing, the scenarios that are going to occur, the different scene changes, what's meant to go where, who's meant to be working with who. Isn't that God's job? Like, when I look at it like that from the outside in, I'm like, why am I trying to be lighting scenery and ballet when I'm meant to be downstage left? You know what I mean? I'm meant to be tree downstage left, but here I am, and it's lighting and spotlights and all of that kind of thing. No wonder I was like coming up against it. It really, really is. You know, the sequence in which everything is meant to be done in is where the joy of life is, isn't it? Because I don't know, and the gift is in the not knowing. Knowing that thinking I know exactly what it should look like is the undoing for me. And I believe that the universe is really and truly always conspiring for my good. God wants for me what I want for me, or always something better. There's a really, really beautiful Rumi quote, and it talks about it's not easy to be a candle, because in order to give light, one must burn first. And I really am truly, truly grateful for the pain that has opened my eyes, so that real humility, real courage, real faith can light the path ahead. You know, I want to thank each and every one of you. I recognise faces and, you know, love you dearly for giving your time to me and giving your help to me. And I'm going to end with, in our third step, it talks about creating a prayer or saying the prayer, but the wording being quite optional. And I wrote a prayer for my third step. And if it's all right with you to close up, I'd like to share it with you. So here it is. Okay. In saying that, my life is no longer my business. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for the invitation to come and be with you this evening, wherever we are in the world time. Thank you. Perfect love, perfect healing, perfect spirit that animates and breathes life into everything, my loving God. I surrender every part of me into the fire of your transformative power. I offer myself completely over to your love, protection, grace and provision. Help me to please let you guide and direct me from here forward. Help me, Great Spirit, to die to my old self. Let me die to the 1,000 big and small ways in which I'm still building up my full self and trying to cling to false desires. Let me be reborn in you and see with your eyes and love with your heart the world and all others in the right way, so that all my actions, words and thoughts become a testimony to you in and through every single thing I do. I need your loving grace to travel on this road that leads to the death of my old self, to a new life in and for you. I pray for a servant's heart, a transformation of my mind and my relationship with you to become my guiding force. You are not one of many relationships, but my only relationship in which all others are grounded. In and through you may I find my origin and my destiny. May I remember always to be grateful for my countless blessings, for everything I have is from you. May I from here forward perform your desires and your will on every occasion, under any circumstance, no matter what, forever. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate, for that beautiful Kate question.
Thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. My name's Young, recovered addict. Thank you very much, Kate. That was wonderful. It was really good to hear you tonight. What kept coming to me when I was listening was that you might have even said it in the book where it says, I have to stop playing God. Why? Because it doesn't work. And you know, that was kind of like the basis of a lot of what I was hearing and my experience also. And then what came to me is I'm playing God with my 15-year-old daughter. She's just started dating. Oh man, I'm finally when my other son told me, I wanted to phone her up and say, right, get him on the phone then. I want to anyway, I can see it doesn't work today, but I still make mistakes. My question is nothing to do with that. My question is, when you came in, have you been all in from the beginning, or have you stumbled a bit? Have you been in and out of the rooms, or was this your first attempt? And if there's anyone new on in this meeting, what would be your words to them if they were in and out? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Young. I've got 2 teenagers. I feel you, brother. I got here in 2017, and it was an addiction specialist, actually, that whose wife was in the rooms and pointed me in the room a way of AA. But it took me 3 years to get a year. Having said that, since I listened to our friend on the Tuesday night and came all the way in and sat all the way down and got a big book, a home group, a sponsor and a service position, I was all the way in. But I had to burn my life to the ground before I was willing to listen. And we don't have to go that far down the scale, right? It talks about that. But when I lost everything and my life was on, like, really and truly, the next thing was death. And then, unfortunately, it took me that I had to go that far for me to be all the way in. And since then, it's been all the way in. Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks for your question, Young. And next up, I have Michael. Do you want to come in with a question?
Hi, thank you, Katie, for hosting the meeting, and thank you very much, Kate, for your wonderful share. Michael, recovered addict. You talked, well, obviously you talked a lot, but you talked a lot about your connection with your higher power, your God, and seeking out His will, and about the step 3. So I find myself a lot of the times when I'm doing my nightly inventory, it takes me back to taking my will back, rather than seeking out God's. So I think my question is, how do you tell the difference between what is God's will and what is your will? You know, because sometimes God sounds a lot like Michael when I'm pausing and listening. So how do you tell the difference? And thank you again for joining us at such an early hour.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah. Through bitter experience, my friend, I don't always know. I really don't. One very, very, very big indication for right here, right now, for me, it might change by the end of the day, you know how it is, but is that if it seems to happen in the flow, if it's gentle, if it helps more than just me, it's likely God's will. When I feel an urgency or something needs to be done, or it should have been done yesterday, that's often a good indication that self is driving the bus, right? When it seems to be gentle and, I don't know, it all unfolds in a certain flow. I trust that. I kind of go with it. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kate, for answering that. Andrew, do you want to come in with a question, please? Andrew, you're on mute.
Good evening. Good morning. Recovered alcoholic Andrew. Thank you, Unshakable team. And thank you, Kate. I look back at my life and I shudder. How on earth did I traverse with my fellow travelers without God? It just boggles my mind today. I was the last to admit that alcohol was a problem. This is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. And I noticed that this issue of self-will is throughout our big book. And I know why they call this a progressive disease. My question to you is, when did you realize that all your energy, mental and physical efforts came to naught prior to the program? When did you come to a realization that everything, aside from the drink and drug question, when did you come to the realization that this is just becoming a hopeless case, as it was for me, in decision making and self-action?
Thanks, Andrew. It's actually really clear for me to see that, actually. It was when I was in a shocking amount of pain and it was the worst my life had ever been. And no matter what I tried to do, I made things worse, right? And I couldn't understand. It was like some people, everything they touch turns to gold. It seemed that anything I touched turned to shit, like it was just awful. And I was started to get afraid of everything because I didn't want to go near you. I didn't want to talk to anyone because it just ended in tears. Whether it be mine, it was always the people that I loved the most. And I just thought, I can't. And it was almost this really cold, dark, isolated place where I just went, fine, you just tell me what to do. And it was also the start of, I'm willing to do everything now because clearly I just can't. It was really clear for me to see that. Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Good question.
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. I'm just going to jump in. There's a question that's come in the chat for you, Kate. So what's your favourite chapter in the big book and why, please?
Oh, dearie me. I like all of the chapters of the book. Do you know what the weirdest thing is? I'm going to say we agnostics, because the very last time I went through the chapter, it hit really different. We agnostics for me in the beginning, I didn't really relate to, you know, what is a prosaic steel girder? What's electricity got to do with this? Like, what are we doing here? And yet it was the last time was the most gentle, beautiful leading of, what do you think is not working? What are you up against? This begging us to lay aside prejudice. And I was able to explore each old idea that I didn't know was attached to me still. it was really quite an experience going through it this last time. So I'd have to say that one. But then I want to say another one, and then I want to say another one. I don't want to answer that question.
Lovely. Thank you so much for answering that, Kate. Sarah, you're up next with your question, please.
Hiya, Sarah Addict. Thank you so much for your share, Kate, for being here at 5 o'clock in the morning. Bless you. That's real dedication. Any lengths, I love it. Well done. So I do have a question, but I'm going to put a little bit of context behind it. I've got a 13-year-old daughter, right? And she's amazing, but she's 13. She's going through some hard times at the moment. She knows I'm in recovery. She knows all about it. You know, she couldn't have not known. Sometimes I struggle to know, firstly, how to balance living amends, you know, making up to her for all the shit that I put her through, with actually still being a strict enough parent and sort of helping her to develop without being sort of walked all over. So first part of my question is, how do you kind of balance that in parenting? And then the second element is sometimes my disease will come in and say into my head and say to me that she's struggling because you're not giving her enough time, because you keep going on those meetings rather than focusing on her. So what do you do or do you have thoughts like that? And if you do, how do you kind of manage that? So sorry, 2 questions there, but they're kind of linked.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I was just writing some notes down actually as you said that, because I do believe anything that we do in recovery is helping us to be a better parent, right? So truly, that's one of the things. Also, we can really overcompensate, which is, like, I found myself doing that quite early on, and it was really, really good sponsorship that pointed that out to me. And then, and actually, it wasn't doing them any favors at all, because it was just because of the guilt and the shame that I felt. Part of my amends, and as you said, living amends, part of my amends to my children, when I sat them both down separately and we had this sort of big discussion, was that they can come to me at any time, and like at the most random times, they're like, let's talk about this one time when you fill in the blank, right? Yeah, let's do that at 20 to midnight. That sounds like fun. But my promise to them through the amends was, if at any point you need to come to me and talk to me, we can. And that literally stands. That's the promise that I kept to them. So it doesn't matter what's going on. If suddenly, because the good news is, if they are acting out a little bit, or they're able to do that, that's a really good sign. Because my kids didn't come near me in the beginning. It was only time and consistency that they started to go, we trust this too. So really, with the parenting, the stuff in recovery, Sarah, makes me a better parent for sure. Does that help?
Lovely, brilliant question. Thank you, Sarah, and thanks, Kate, for answering that. Isaac, do you want to come in with your question, please?
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, everyone doing service. I'm Isaac. I'm a recovered addict. Kate, thank you so much for your share. Thank you for joining us so early in the morning as well. It's really appreciated. Really grateful to hear you today. My question, I enjoyed all of your share, but I really connected with when you touched on kind of the difference between belief and faith alone in God and access to. And I was just wondering, what were kind of your first experiences in early recovery of access to God instead of just belief or just faith? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. Brilliant. So belief in, I had from teeny tiny. And I always say this when it kind of got to step 4, and how I try and explain it to the people that I work with, is that I'm never searching for God. God is not lost. I'm searching for what has me blocked. So I always had belief in. The access to got dimmer and fade, like it got less and less tangible, because I was so blocked because of how I'd been living life, right? And if I fall asleep in my life today, still I kind of go, oh, I'm not feeling it. You know what I mean? Because, yeah. So the access to is, I don't know, because we hear, and some of the people that I really sort of look up to in Alcoholics Anonymous, or some of our greatest teachers, say they go through dry spells. That doesn't mean that there's not a connection or access to, right? So I have to be really mindful of that, because my ego wants to say, see, doesn't care, see, you're on your own. I got to be really watching that stuff, right? So I think the access to, for me today, is just, I think it's that trust. It's to be able to feel it. Like, it does come to me as a feeling. I can sit, like I was up at 4 going, oh my God, give me the words, give me the words, give me the words, right? Like freaking out at 4 o'clock in the morning going, how do I get access to this power before I talk to these beautiful people? But there was something that just, when I was able to sit in my body, I felt the difference with you today. I've been in my body. The access to feels like that for me today. The access to, for me, when I just look around and go, you know, the trust. I don't know whether that makes sense. It's really hard to kind of articulate it, but that's what I've got on that, Isaac. I don't know whether that even answered it. Sorry. Okay.
Thank you for your question, Isaac, and thanks for asking that, Kate. Thank you. Has anybody else got a question? Marrakesh, do you want to come in with your question, please? You're on mute there.
Did that work?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Marrakesh Addict. It was lovely listening to you, Kate. Yeah, I am 5 months sober. I just finished steps 4 and 5. I have an amazing sponsor. I love the fellowship. I'd be lost without it. I ended up in psychosis due to drug use and was sectioned. And when I came out of the hospital, I lost access to my son. So it's been 5 months since I've seen him as well. And just last Friday, I went to court, and I'm going to get access in the next month or so. I get to start seeing him again. But and I prayed so much for that. Like, I prayed just for any type of access. And I got it. But I'm having such a hard time accepting the access that I got. Obviously, it's not what I want. Of course, I just want to be back with my son. And I know that God has a plan. I really do. But it is testing my faith. And so my question for you is, your journey back to your children, because it sounds like there was a time maybe when you weren't with them. What was that like for you, and how did you get through it?
Yeah, thanks, Marrakesh. It was grueling. It really, really was. And when I was able to have access to them, I had to be drug tested before I went near them as well. And I'll leave my number in the chat, Marrakesh. If you want to talk some more, I'd be more than happy to. What's the question? Sorry, let me just be clear on the question.
It's just getting through it. Like, I'm sure you relied heavily on your faith, but if there was anything like in the process that made it easier for you, or...
Yeah, I trusted the people around me that were in recovery that told me to do all the things, right? And I just did all the things. As I said, when I answering Isaac's, like I didn't know, who was it I was talking to? Like, anything that I touched just disintegrated before my eyes. So the fact that I was even able to have access to the children and see them supervised and drug tested, I'll take it. I don't even care if I have to crawl over broken glass now. I'll take it, whatever you've got, right? But I continued with everything, my sponsorship, the steps, continue with going to the meeting, all of the stuff, prayer and meditation. You already said you prayed for this. God wants what you want for you, or something better. I really know that with all of me. So it's just this is only the minutest little moment in time in comparison to what is coming. That's my experience as well. So if it would help for me to put my number in, please take it. And I'm on WhatsApp.
Thank you for your question, Marrakesh. Thanks, Kate. And Mags, do you want to come in and take us out with your question, please?
Yes, thank you so much, Katie, for hosting, and everybody in the background that's doing service. Mags Alcoholic. Kate, it was amazing to hear you. I love that God has given you your voice. I love it, especially at this time of the morning. It's so early. I loved the fact that you said that it took you 3 years to get 1 year. And that, for me, shows the intensity of which you started to work the program. When you started to follow the clear-cut directions, things changed for you very, very quickly. And I know that a big part of your life is, working with others, as you talked about. And in that working with others, the intensive work, one alcoholic with another, one addict with another, I would just love to know, what's the biggest thing that you've learned from your sponsees that has truly helped you transform your life? Something that you couldn't pinpoint yourself, but they have shone a light on that for it to be healed with you.
I want to say, the answer to that, Max. Wow, yeah, okay. Do you know what? The biggest thing that there's been turbulent times. It talks about they're like it's yeast to defects of character. Sponsorship. It's thank God though. Thank God. Firstly, thank God, because when I fall asleep to the hand of God in my life, I can always see the hand of God in theirs. So that really, really helps. I get to have a spiritual experience every time they're having a spiritual experience. That's a trip. What have I learned? That I can't manage anybody's life, right? It's not going to go the way that I think. It's not going to go the way that I hope sometimes. I've been to funerals, and I've also seen people have their children brought back into their life. I've had people that don't want to do the work. And what I've really learned is that I can't want this more than somebody else wants it for themselves, right? There is no such thing as, I have to quit beating myself up with, trying to do sponsorship perfectly, trying to do all of this perfectly. What I was going to say something then, it was about sponsorship. What makes a brilliant sponsor is a willing sponsee. So really and truly, if I continue to turn up and they continue to turn up, magic. But I cannot want it more than somebody else wants it for themselves. And to let others be. Like, I really think that when I've got a good idea, everybody needs to hear about it, and let's implement it all together, right? No, not always. So yeah, great question, Mags. Thank you.